Like, as promised, our colleague Paul Murray joins us live.
Hello, mate.
What did you make of the concession speech, Paul?
Look, again, as I said all the way through when it was becoming obvious that he was going to win, I don't want to be, you don't want to spike the ball, okay? Look, I'll have my own show and we'll do all of that stuff a little bit later. I can understand the devastation of being this close to the presidency, being the sitting vice president in this place, but that was sort of, the word salad was there at the end and it was a bit rotten, and I get it that you've got to tell people that despite we've lost, we haven't really lost, keep on fighting, or the billion stars, what was all that garbage about? This was over last night in terms of what the campaigns knew at 10 o'clock, all right? So her decision not to do it, it's worth mentioning again that I think it gives us an insight into her character, but also into maybe some of the false expectations that she had about what was potential. Now, the difference between, say, the public polling that is out and about or the media-sponsored polling is that it's not as sophisticated as the internal polling of political parties, and a political party that in her case had $1 billion. $1 billion to have the best possible insight into what is happening. There are ways to follow the electorate that aren't even necessarily poll-driven. You can be scraping social media. You can be seeing what people are publicly posting to get a sense of where people are moving. So she had the best possible machine to look at what was happening, yet she thought she was going to win. She woke up yesterday thinking she was going to win, and by the end of it, she was blown away. There's all questions about whether her candidacy in and of itself really was dead on arrival because, as I was mentioning before with Pete, Trump announced that he was running for the presidency 2 years ago. He was effectively able to act as the opposition leader during the worst of the Biden years.
He had to fight out those primaries. They did not make it easy for him.
Well, and remember, in the intervening period between 2021 and when he turned around before the midterms, by the way, in 2022, no one was calling him. It was a scandal to go and see him.
Yeah. I remember every time someone got caught seeing him in Mar-a-Lago, it was a story. You'd see it in Politico or Axios or something. Yeah.
So in many ways, the Republican Party tried to move past Trump.
Yeah.
But Trump went, here I am, I ain't going anywhere. And as soon as he entered into that candidacy, well, then he became the biggest force in the room. And also, I think that him being able to relentlessly every day talk about the border, which the government wasn't admitting was a problem.
Until it was, and they had the solution 2 years ago, and the Republicans stopped doing anything about it. But then the question is, well, you had control in the House and the Senate. Why didn't you do it then?
Well, exactly. But also, things like the economy, and the truth is that when you measure things, and this is part of the problem for Albo, right? Which is that if you measure things today compared to 4 years ago, again, all those things are way higher, okay? Is the amount that it's going to increase for the next few months going to remain smaller, but it's still on top of this giant thing. So what was really interesting, and I think is fascinating to see here too, is that, look, you're going to see some spiking of the ball for some people on YouTube. Yes, you're going to hear some hosts that are going, we always knew. Okay, cool, great, enjoy. But I think what changed with this election was that the Democrats who were constantly talking to the demographics of race or age or gender, instead, the fundamental alignment here was your economic position. Hence why Trump won the vote of people earning between $25,000 and $100,000. She won under 25 and over 100. Guess where the extreme majority of America is? That band between 25 and 100.
I don't know if I necessarily agree on the character point of her not speaking last night and coming out today to do it. I think what it speaks to is lack of campaign experience. That she's never had to do the scrappy fight for a congressional race. She never had to fight for her Senate seats or the Attorney General. Those are all locked up Democrat positions in California. She dropped out of the 2020 primaries before Iowa when things were looking bad. She gets picked up by Biden, and so she gets thrown into a presidential campaign in 2 months to do it, and didn't appreciate how much of the legwork she'd skipped.
But also, I mean, as we saw during her time as the vice president, 90-something% of her staff ended up sacking, going, sorry, I can't do this, I'm out of here, right? She had the best, the AAA plus team of the Democrats, and they all would have been saying to her last night, get out there.
Yeah.
I understand why emotionally it's all sorts of complicated things, but it sort of shows that, and this was part of her decision-making failures as a politician, was that too many people in the room, and sometimes she ends up just going with the one who already agreed with her. But in terms of her political future, look, she's 60 years old. She was elected to the Californian Senate. I wouldn't be surprised if, just like Richard Nixon, when of course he lost in the 1960 election as a sitting vice president, that after licking your wounds, you go back to California, become the governor, and then potentially try to rebuild from there. But I would imagine that any chance of her in the next few cycles being anywhere near a top of a ticket, I think are none Buckleys and bugger all. But she won California, and that may well be the place where she will go on in executive government.
I'd put money on a cushy private sector job. She's had too much money thrown at her campaign with too little return on investment.
Good point.
So,
but also, can I say one other thing too about transition that's taking place right now, some of the machinery that I want to talk about here? One of the really interesting things about America is that basically, let's imagine, there's a sort of a big section of the government that changes when the president changes, right? So that, of course, that system. I'm just explaining to everyone. So you've got to find 10,000 different jobs, all right? They've got multiple months to do that, and that process has started right now. Two people who are very significant in that process is Lara Trump, who's in the transition committee, and Linda McMahon. Yes, wrestling fans, that Linda McMahon, but of course she was a part of this. She was a small business minister in the Trump administration, and as Trump told Joe Rogan, even all these people who hate you, they're on the phone and they're lobbying for a job, and I think that it's going to be fascinating to see who he dangles in front of. Remember Mitt Romney going to dinner, a candlelit dinner in New York? He was no chance of being there. But I think that he has a mandate, and that mandate includes the people he ends up putting into those jobs. He doesn't have to keep a bit of George Bush and a bit of old school Republican. It's all Trump, top to bottom.
RFK Jr. for health secretary, who knows? Sorry,
Your job's fun for the next 4 years, mate. We'll be crossing you every night.